This week, I'm asking my friend Delilah Welch to share the essay that she submitted from the Marine Military Academy. It was a national essay contest for students and staff at military schools. And the prompt was, how is a military education different from a traditional education? I also like to mention, as cool as it is that she submitted her work to the national essay contest, she also took first place, which is really impressive. So Delilah, if you could please share that, we'd enjoy hearing it.
Absolutely. As I stood in the foggy darkness beside the stalwart Iwo Jima Memorial located on our campus in Harlingen, Texas, Colonel Christopher Dowling, president of the Marine Military Academy, waited beside me as I prepared for one of the most difficult tasks of my life. Not a sound could be heard, and yet I discerned the shadowy figures of over 250 cadets marching toward me in perfect formation. In unison, they halted, and quickly the night was warmed by the soft glow of little tea lights, cupped in the hands of the cadets, faculty, staff, administration, and friends. After a brief reflection and introduction from Colonel Dowling, I approached the cadets and addressed them. It was my task that night to deliver a eulogy to these young men for a beloved history teacher, Michael Gillitzer, who had suddenly died the week prior. I spoke of his passion for teaching, his unique way of enkindling a love for history in his students, and his tremendous work ethic. The reason I was selected for this particular honor was because Michael Gillitzer had not only been my co-worker for 17 years, but he was also my fiancé and best friend. While I attempted to remain strong for these young men whose lives had been touched by death, some for the very first time, I quavered because the entire trajectory of my future and that of my family had altered its course forever. When I concluded, our campus chaplain led the cadets in a reflective prayer, and the young men returned to their barracks. Well, most of them. Some, who had seen Mr. G as a fatherly figure, were overwhelmed with grief and moved to tears. What I witnessed next was one of the most touching scenes I've beheld in my 20 years as an educator. I observed company commanders and other student officers embracing their subordinates. Before me, drill instructors, both retired and active Marines, counseled their charges. I realized that these men comprehend considerably more about loss and grief than I could possibly fathom. While the military staff photos on our school's website show intimidating, hatchet-faced drill instructors, what I perceived that night were surrogate fathers tenderly navigating their charges through one of the most difficult realities of life: death. When Mike and I first began working at MMA in the fall of 2021, we were certain an all-male military school would be different from the public school at which we had taught previously, but we were unsure how. Would the students be little automatons? Would they have less personality? Would the military staff be cold and unfeeling? We quickly observed the answer to these questions is a resounding no. One of the marked differences I observed in these students, as opposed to those I have worked with previously, is that each student is actively engaged in the development of his own character. That is not to say that they are always successful in their attempts, but there is a constant drive from every aspect of the school and from within the student body to aspire to the Marine Corps values of honor, courage, and commitment. Teachers expect honorable behavior and academic integrity in their classes, and when students fall short, both the academic and military administrations of the school address the issue to the overall benefit of the students and the student body. In the back 40, where cadets are challenged regularly, they face one of the most common crippling fears, the fear of failure, and with the support of their brothers, overcome that fear. In every facet of their day, they are taught to engage with their lives, to commit rather than check out. When one considers the disarray of our modern world where each individual decides their own relative values, a military education is rather countercultural. 2 days after the address at the Iwo Jima Memorial, I stood at Michael's wake, swathed in black. I'd been on my feet at the funeral home, greeting and consoling mourners for hours. I was weary in every aspect of my being. Unexpectedly, Master Gunnery Sergeant Ricardo Gonzalez, the drill instructor for Alpha Company, approached me. "Ma'am, again, I'm so sorry for your loss. I was wondering if you could take a seat here." He motioned to the first seat in front of Michael's casket. "Some cadets are here and would like to pay their respects." I took a grateful seat and was approached by a faction of my beloved cadets, clad in their dress blues. Cadet Eric Eckstein stepped forward. "Ma'am, on behalf of the Marine Military Academy, please accept this Marine's Bible as a symbol of appreciation for Mr. Gillitzer's service to our school." I was stunned and overwhelmed with emotion. I had viewed this so many times in films and even at my own grandfather's funeral, but never expected to receive such an honor. My cadets were presenting me with the Bible as Marine widows are presented American flags. The beautiful little scarlet and gold book in my hands was embossed with "The Marine's Bible" on the front. Then he and several cadets greeted me one by one and offered me their condolences. They shared with me stories of how Mr. G had impacted their lives. Their stories and smiles through tears assured me that not only would my beloved Mike be remembered, but they were sturdily on the path to healing. I offered to individually escort the cadets who were willing to approach the casket so they could say their farewells. One cadet placed a bundle of letters from the Corps of Cadets into the casket. Many of them placed name badges by his side. No gesture could have honored Mike's love of teaching more than these simple, heartfelt gifts from his own beloved students. These young men had learned so many invaluable lessons throughout this week. They had experienced tremendous loss, yes. However, together they grieved and consoled one another. They learned how to honor the dead and pay respect to the living. This one encounter is just one example of the unique education offered at a military school. In a society where anything goes and it is what it is, military schools offer an education that addresses the whole student, their minds, their bodies, and their characters.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Good Grief Believer podcast. I believe we grieve better when we share our experiences with others, and I am always eager to hear from other people about their unique grief journey. Please contact me if you would be willing to share your perspective with me as a guest on the Good Grief Believer podcast by emailing me at goodgriefbeliever@gmail.com. That's GOODGRIEFBELIEVER @gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you soon.